Welcome to Close of Business. I'm Alicia Barry. Australian property prices have scaled new record highs in July as demand for housing offsets buyer concerns about the Reserve Bank's shock call to leave interest rates on hold last month. But economists say the market could be reaching a price peak as affordability bites. Here's business reporter Rihanna Whitson.
House prices are going up again. This weekday inspection might be quiet, but properties in the nation's second biggest city are selling fast.
We're noticing increase in the demand and also the competition, so that's starting to drive prices up.
As buyers forge ahead despite interest rates remaining steady.
Even perceived rate cuts is helping people understand that the market's probably heading in an upwards trajectory.
Nationally, prices rose 0.6% in July and 3.7% for the year. The median home value is now more than $844,000. Darwin led the monthly gains, followed by Perth, Adelaide, Brisbane, Sydney, the regions Canberra, Melbourne and Hobart.
This is the sixth consecutive month of increase that started with cash rates being reduced in February.
While the RBA shocked markets by leaving the cash rate on hold last month, August rate relief is now widely expected. That will add fuel to property price growth as buyers are able to borrow more. The question is, how high can home values go? Some economists say we could be reaching a peak.
The amount of money that a first-time buyer can borrow is way below what they'll actually need to get into the property market. At the moment, they're relying on the bank of mum and dad, but there's a limit to that. And of course, it's also grossly unfair.
Affordability is probably the biggest headwind to growth. We're seeing a median income household would go into the median dwelling value about 8 times, so at near record highs.
Another property boom saddling the next generation with more debt. Rihanna Whitson, ABC News.
As we've heard, the Reserve Bank has defied the pundits by keeping rates on hold in July, citing the need for more evidence the inflation genie is back in the bottle. Well, the latest figures show inflation falling to its lowest rate in more than 3 years, all but locking in an August rate cut, as Amelia Terzon reports.
From meat costs to seafood and staples like bread, price hikes on many essentials are easing, and this lower inflation could prompt another win for borrowers.
The Reserve Bank is probably going to drop interest rates.
That's good news. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
we'd love it.
David Bassanese was one of the few economists who predicted the Reserve Bank's shock decision to leave rates on hold in July. The economist thinks the latest inflation figures will be what the board hopes to see.
I think that's good enough to really justify an RBA rate cut at the August policy meeting.
Some economists think the board has already waited too long.
I find it really hard to see them not cutting rates in August. I don't want to say that it's a done deal because I said that last time and I was proven wrong.
Consumer prices rose 0.7% in the June quarter and 2.1% for the year. The RBA's preferred measure of underlying inflation fell to 2.7%, which is within the central bank's target range.
This number was a bit higher than what the RBA expected back in May.
This is the lowest inflation in almost 4 years. These are very pleasing, very welcome, absolutely outstanding inflation numbers.
But there's still been some price spikes, with eggs up more than 19% in a year because of bird flu outbreaks.
The thing that has surprised me the most is butter. I use a lot of butter in my cooking, and butter is wild right now.
Food and drink prices have risen by 3% due to higher prices for fruit and vegetables, but the cost of new builds and rents are growing at their slowest annual pace in years, and insurance premium increases are also easing, pushing services inflation back to average levels, and fuel prices went backwards.
We're seeing pretty much broad-based declines across goods, services and housing-related inflation.
The Reserve Bank has already cut interest rates twice this year. Another cut would be good news for people with mortgages, but also businesses that have been struggling as households hold back on spending. The hospitality sector has been faring the worst.
I think it just feels like every day there's another battle. It's like it feels punishing some days. You know, you try and stay optimistic.
This bar and restaurant hasn't raised its prices despite the cost of things like coffee and tea increasing nearly 10% in a year.
That feeling right throughout hospitality is this tension between needing to keep the lights on but also not wanting to alienate customers who are price sensitive right now.
I think the great hope is that lower interest rates will start to see consumer spending pick up. Consumer spending has been very constrained now for a few years. It's certainly hurting many sectors in the hospitality, retailing sector in particular.
The longer that we keep rates high, the longer that we go through this period of poor growth.
The RBA's next interest rates decision is due on August 12.
Electric vehicle sales are surging to record highs, driven by new brands and more affordable prices. Australia's new vehicle emission standards, which came into force this month, are expected to accelerate the EV uptake. But the industry still faces some roadblocks, as Rihanna Whitson reports.
Competition for a slice of Australia's electric vehicle market is going into overdrive.
Next year, 2670 new models hit the market and new brands come to market as well.
At this EV show in Melbourne, the buzz is evident.
Low maintenance, low operating costs, potentially bi-directional charging.
We still have a bit of range anxiety. I don't need to ever go to a petrol station anymore.
In June, EVs accounted for a record 10.3% of all new car sales in Australia. Add in plug-in hybrids and they make up more than 15%.
We're starting to see the Chinese electric car makers catch up, and that's another big factor because they're pitching pretty interesting electric vehicles at a lower price.
Some models sell for about $30,000. Industry observers expect prices to become even cheaper as car makers rush to ensure they meet Australia's new vehicle emission standards.
If they don't meet those sales number or those emission standards, then they have to pay another car maker credits, and they'd rather keep the money themselves, and even if they have to take a bit of a loss on their own car, they'd probably prefer to get that out of the door.
Tesla still dominates EV sales, leaving the lower-priced Chinese car maker BYD in the rearview mirror. But if you include plug-in hybrids, BYD outsold Tesla in the first half of 2025.
And we've been bringing these cars in since October last year.
XPeng is another Chinese car maker eyeing off buyers here.
Australia doesn't have a domestic car industry that we need to protect, so a lot of those potential tariffs or barriers or boundaries for entry have gone.
This local XPeng rep says EV sales would be even higher if there was better charging infrastructure.
I find the availability of charging publicly is okay, but the speed I find and the maintenance is what I'm finding now is very problematic.
EV owners may soon face new taxes, with the federal government saying a road use charge to replace the fuel excise is inevitable.
Road user tax placed on top of the already existing taxes really doesn't make a lot of sense.
Also under threat is the fringe benefits tax exemption for EVs. Polestar's Australian boss says instead, tax breaks for utes should be scrapped.
That's an exemption that's been afforded to those vehicles since 1986 and cost taxpayers billions of dollars. It makes far more sense to put those subsidies against vehicles that are going to create cleaner air.
Reduced US government subsidies have already knocked Tesla's sales. But despite its market dominance being under threat, there was no official stall at this EV show.
And we are just a group of people who enjoy or love our cars.
This group of die-hard Tesla owners are unperturbed by brand competitors or the antics of the company's CEO.
I drive the car for the car. I mean, Elon Musk owns 12.5% of Tesla. He's one man.
Would you ever go back to an internal combustion engine car?
There is no way.
Roadblocks ahead for an accelerating market.
It's been called sexually transmitted debt. Women who are survivors of financial abuse have slammed the tax office for chasing them for huge debts instead of going after the perpetrators. Now there are growing calls for the victims of fraud to be protected. Nasim Kadem has the story.
When the tax office came knocking, Laura was in shock about how much business debt her ex-partner had racked up in her name. To protect her safety, we've concealed her identity.
I could not even transfer $1 to me. When we got separated, I remember having a roof over my head. No bills were paid because he wouldn't pay any. He wouldn't buy groceries, allow me to buy groceries for me and the child. I don't know what the circumstance.
Laura suffered years of abuse.
He would keep tabs on me, he would call me 50 times a day. I was so scared.
When the abuse turned physical, Laura left the relationship and took control of the business. As a director, she became personally liable for about $500,000. The ATO refuses to waive it because of a phone call she made to the tax office in 2017 under duress from her ex.
He was there telling me what to say.
The ATO sent a letter to Laura saying she should have explained what was going on. She says she couldn't because she was scared for her life.
I wish that they would look at us victims and see what we actually went through, and that the person that's liable should be going after them.
Did you know at that point you'd taken all the money?
Rose also faced an ordeal with the tax office after leaving her husband.
There was alcohol abuse on his part, and with the alcohol abuse came emotional and mental abuse. Almost instantly at the time of separation, the financial abuse escalated.
It escalated how?
He emptied the bank accounts, completely emptied them. It was our business account, so we had a lot of money in there.
The ATO was on Rose's back, chasing about $200,000 of debt that's now been paid.
I said to them, he's also director, are you contacting him? And they said to me that the men never pay and the women do. We always go after the women.
They said that to you?
They said that to me.
Financial counsellors are calling on the ATO to train staff to deal with cases of domestic violence.
Hey, good morning, Caitlin. How you going? Good, just seeing that correspondence.
They also want new laws allowing debts in these cases to be waived.
These women are not trying to avoid tax or scammers, that it's simply not their tax obligations, and that needs to be understood and recognised within the ATO.
This is a family violence intervention order.
They are, in effect, sexually transmitted tax debts, and often it can be a deliberate tactic to further the abuse.
The ATO's on a mission to claw back almost $56 billion in debts owed, mostly by small businesses, and much of it's considered undisputed. Last financial year, more than 64,000 people were hit with director penalty notices with just 21 days to pay up. More than 15,000 garnishee notices were issued, where the ATO can take money directly from people's bank accounts, and over 24,500 business debts were reported to credit agencies.
So with the ATO's vulnerability framework, what we really...
This harsher ATO action is seeing a big spike in calls to debt helplines.
People are worried about the future of their housing. People are worried about the future of their businesses, and they want to pay. They just need a bit of flexibility.
When did you receive this letter?
At this tax clinic, counsellors are dealing with people in serious financial hardship, but say the ATO won't listen.
We can help you out. I feel like they just have no sympathy whatsoever. These people aren't often well placed to advocate for themselves, and they are just told no.
The ATO told ABC News that the agency is open to giving people payment plans and waiving interest on tax debts where it's warranted. When it comes to victims of financial abuse, it said it's currently consulting on a new framework and would consider how it can better act with empathy and connect people with the right support. But the nation's tax ombudsman is also getting more complaints and wants the ATO to give people more time to pay debts.
My concern is about how they use the powers that they've got, the strengthening of their approach to debt collection.
A tougher approach that's creating havoc for Australia's most vulnerable.
Donald Trump has unleashed his new round of tariff rates, with Australia hanging on to a baseline 10%. Also dodging a bullet, sleep device maker Resmed says it's almost entirely exempt from Trump's tariff wrath, posting a better than expected full-year profit. The company made $1.4 billion, up 37% on the previous year. I spoke with CEO Mick Farrell. Mick Farrell, welcome to Close of Business.
Great to be back here, Alicia.
Donald Trump's announced his new trade regime. Are you still exempt from his tariffs?
We've had a decades-long-standing agreement with the CBP, the Customs and Border Protection Group, that the Nairobi Protocol, which is tariff relief for people with disabilities, that includes sleep apnea, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, insomnia, respiratory insufficiency. The diseases and disorders that we treat are disabilities. And so through that Nairobi Protocol, we have relief from tariffs. So the way we look at it is the sort of ups and downs that are happening in geopolitics and trade right now is noise for the rest of the market, but Resmed is a compelling investment in that environment because we're free of that and we can just focus on running our business.
And that applies even across the supply chain when it comes to component parts, for example?
There will be some components and parts, but it's de minimis and it's immaterial to our business.
You're expanding your US factory footprint in plans made before Trump's victory. But how is the administration's policy shaping the operating environment for business in the US?
The plan for that is associated with a Resmed 2040, Resmed 2035 and 2040 plan. So many of those investments were in play long before the Trump administration came into the White House in January. But look, this administration has been very clear that they want to be very supportive of US manufacturing, US investments in R&D. And so the fact that our investments are in line with the current administration is a good thing. And there will be some investments or subsidies or incentives that they want to have for people increasing their manufacturing. And we'll work with the government to make sure that for us and for our shareholders, we take advantage of those. But it's going to be in line with our long-term strategy.
I note that Donald Trump has sent letters to 17 major pharmaceutical company CEOs with a list of demands, including lowering pricing. You're, of course, not on that list, but does this worry you?
Yes, so there's two very different sectors in healthcare when you think about pharmaceutical industry and medical devices or medical technology, medtech, where Resmed sits. So that letter is based upon pharmaceutical prices being so much higher in the US versus rest of the world, and the Trump administration wants to bring those down. It's the opposite case, and we're seeing no attention from the Trump administration on our US pricing because it's very much in line with what the needs are of the people and what the economics are of us and our fellow medtech companies.
Your results beat expectations, especially on the revenue line. Are the concerns about weight loss drugs eating into demand for your products behind you?
We've had very strong top line and bottom line growth that we announced, not just this quarter, the June quarter, but for our full fiscal year 2025, which ended on June 30. Yeah, I think 18 months, 24 months ago, there was a lot of hype around these new GLP-1 or GLP-1 medicines that they were going to be a panacea for everything. I think what we've realised, and if you look at the market cap of the two big leaders there, Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk, together they were around $1.5 trillion US 2 years ago. Now they're much more back down to earth, well back down to earth, and probably in line with where they are, which is a new class of medicine So that's what we're seeing. And actually, if you look at our numbers and think about, well, Resmed has to, if market growth rate is mid-single digits in devices and high single-digit growth in masks, and as you said, we beat both of those in this quarter, we have to be, as the market leader, we have to be doing something about demand generation, bringing new patients into the funnel, and we're doing that. Yeah, 2 years ago, people thought GLP-1s would be a headwind for MedTech and for Resmed. Now I think everyone agrees it's a tailwind. The question is how much? How many more patients will come in, and can we help them get demand gen, capture and curation to get that prescription and to get on therapy for life?
With that in mind, what is the outlook for the company for the next 12 months?
We don't give, revenue growth guidance, but we're going to help 500 million people, 500 million people, to sleep better, breathe better, and have longer and healthier and happier lives by 2030.
Mick Farrell, thank you so much.
Thanks for your time, Alicia. Talk to you soon.
To the share market, which ended the week around where it started. The ASX 200 and the All Ords finishing the trading week fairly flat. Gemma Dale from NAB Trade joined me. Gemma, Donald Trump has essentially reignited a global trade war with sweeping tariffs. Australia was relatively unscathed, and fair to say so is the market.
Yeah, flat week for the ASX, really. Some good days, some bad days. Ended up not too far off where we started. And I think tariffs, maybe we've got fatigue now. There's been so much drama on the tariff front. And I think investors globally and traders globally have become quite used to the fact that these can change any time. What is announced today may well change tomorrow. There's the taco phenomenon, Trump always chickens out. And to your point though, Australia's come in, we think at 10%, we think that's where it's going to land. That was what was announced back in April. We're one of the few countries where the US has a surplus anyway. The only thing that was materially on the table from a negotiation standpoint was beef, which was a biosecurity issue really, rather than trade issue. So it does feel like we're okay, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's where we land forever.
Well, that's right. I mean, after the first Liberation Day, there was a bond and equity market revolt. I mean, is there a risk that it could still happen?
I think, yes, it's a very real risk. At this point in time, particularly when you look at equity markets, they've rallied so hard off the lows. You're really at a point where we're making all-time highs on a regular basis. Yes, obviously earnings are looking quite fabulous in some pockets of the market, and we're having US reporting season, the last of that starting to come through. But when you look more broadly, the risks are quite material, and Jerome Powell is holding the line against a very aggressive White House. There's a lot of risks in this market that don't feel particularly well priced in, and some of these tariffs that have landed are not particularly sensible numbers. We've got 35% against Canada. Mexico's got a pause. It's all over the show at the moment. So the risks are still there, I think. We could see something really start to destabilise.
The other big story of the week really was the US tech earnings, and at the end of the week, Apple was impressing investors. Amazon was doing the opposite, but there really isn't anywhere else you'd want to be in the US, is there?
Oh, such a difficult market, so concentrated at the top end. And we have not seen this level of concentration in markets really since the dot-com bubble. It's actually slightly worse than that, which is incredible. Yes, Apple did impress, and I think the market's been waiting for that for a long time. We've seen iPhone sales up 13%. That is good news for investors who've been waiting for that, and revenue really starting to lift as well. On the flip side, Amazon's an interesting story because it was a slight beat on the sort of top line earnings, and bottom line was actually quite strong, but it was the outlook that really sort of disappointed the market, and it's very fully priced. So there's a fair bit of concern, I think, yet to play out really in prices, but a bit of concern that maybe we've started paying a little bit too much for some of this.
Well, locally, Rio Tinto was the big name that reported this week with pretty disappointing half-year results. Who are we expecting to hear from next week?
Yeah, so we've got reporting season starting to kick off. It's still fairly quiet next week. It doesn't really sort of get quite heavy until the week after. Next week, we've got AMP, which is interesting. It's sort of come on a bit of a run. It's back into inflows in its platform business, in super in particular, after many, many disappointing years. So I think investors will be quite keen to see what's happening there. We have a few of the REITs, and the real estate sector, it's a bit boring in your portfolio a lot of the time, but given what we saw during COVID and the real shifts in return to office and so on, that is much more interesting, particularly on an outlook basis. And then we've got Nick Scali at the end of the week, so you can look there for retail and the strength of the consumer. So a few interesting ones to come through.
Absolutely. Gemma Dale, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Despite posting billions of dollars in profit, the Commonwealth Bank is holding out against paying $270 million in refunds to low-income earners incorrectly charged excessive bank fees. Other banks have agreed to refund $60 million in fees charged to people on low-income government benefits after an investigation by the corporate watchdog.
Niggener woman Susan Potts is among thousands of Australians refunded money after being wrongfully charged 10 years of bank fees. The Broome resident had a high fee account instead of a low fee account for people on government assistance.
We've been taken advantage of for the last 10 to whatever years, and there's something that's going to be done about it.
The corporate watchdog ASIC last year recommended $33 million be repaid to Indigenous customers by the Commonwealth, ANZ, Westpac and Bendigo banks. Now it's revealed other low-income customers could see a further $60 million. ANZ, Westpac, Bendigo and several smaller banks have agreed to pay, but the Commonwealth Bank, including Bankwest, is holding back $270 million despite recording multi-billion-dollar profits.
We are going to monitor the action that all banks, including CBA, take in response to this report, and if we see continued problems, we may take further action.
ASIC says about 1 million customers have already been moved to low-fee accounts. While some refunds will be paid automatically, people should contact their bank to find out if they're eligible. But that's easier said than done for people in remote locations. Bardijawi woman Bernadette Angus doesn't know if she'll see a cent.
It'll make a lot of difference because that's the thing that we're looking for and hoping to help us out.
Our clients don't have strict delivery of mail, they don't have a home computer, they don't have a desk and a chair, they don't have a home internet connection, and they have no way of storing documents. And the banks need to wake up.
The ABC asked the Commonwealth Bank about the $270 million in fees the bank charged between 2019 and 2024. In a statement, the bank said the fees were charged in accordance with terms and conditions, but it would consider goodwill adjustments where appropriate. Essie Deeves, ABC News, Broome.
And that's all from Close of Business. For more on those stories, you can go to our website and catch The Business Monday to Thursday evenings at 8:45 Eastern on the ABC News channel and after the late news on ABC TV. I'm Alicia Barry. Thanks for watching.